D-O-double-G. Dun, 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 dun. Sound like Peter Griffin.
Oh boy.
Na, 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 na. Oh my gosh. Hello, good evening to everybody. Welcome to the Sabby and Jaybe show here on RBN Revolutionary Blackout Network. It is so good to see you guys on Thursday, January 12th, 2023. It is so good to have you. Just to let you guys know, the Sabby and Jaybe show is every single Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also catch Sabby here on RBN at 6 p.m. Eastern on Fridays, and you can catch me on the Jaybe show on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please make sure to give us a like, just like you guys do for CJ, and you guys give him that love. Make sure to give us that love in the like section, because guess what? If you don't, that other people can't see it. This message doesn't get out there. As well, thank you to the patrons on Patreon, for without you guys, we would not be able to do this. And thank you all for your loyalty and support. Our hearts, thank you very much. Tonight, we have special guest, Chuck Modiano, coming in and helping us with this subject. Chuck, so good to see your smiling and bright face and your dedication to free speech as well as human rights. Thank you for gracing us with your presence.
Well, listen, and thank you for the invitation. Great to be here. You talk about free speech. Jay, last time I saw Sabby Sabs, we were on the street together fighting for freedom for Julian Assange. So it's all about the free speech. It's all about free press, and journalism should not be a crime.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right.
Yep. Definitely. Now, typically, I would go to the chat and say hello to everybody, but because we have a guest, and also this will be an abbreviated Sabby and Jaybe show, so we will not be able to get to those tonight. I will, however, show any interesting chats and super chats throughout the conversation. Unfortunately, I will not be able to read them aloud. I do apologize in advance, okay? But we are going to get into the story, as you guys have seen from the news lately, as well as our thumbnail. Dana White is in trouble. Sabby, let me ask you this question. If I show the video in question of what Dana White did, do you think we will get flagged on YouTube?
Probably not. I think a lot of people have already shown the video, so I think it'll be fine.
Okay, so I'm going to show the video of what happened first to give you guys context as to what happened with Dana White and why he's under fire, and then we can get into what has transpired since then, as well as Chuck's thoughts about the entire situation. So,
and for those who are not aware, Dana White is a UFC fighter. So just FYI.
Mm-hmm. Isn't he one of the heads of UFC as well?
Mm-hmm.
He's a CEO. He is the head. He put it all together. Yeah, put it all together.
And isn't he in business with Joe Rogan as well?
That I'm not sure about.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, Joe Rogan's really into MMA, so they obviously know each other and they work together. But I think the key from our journalist perspective, the key is that you have ESPN is a corporate partner, and when you have a corporate partner, that changes how you cover a story.
Okay.
Thank
you. All right, perfect. Okay, so this is going to be, this was on New Year's Eve 2023. So that was 13 to 12 days ago. So this is what happens. And it's only 5 seconds, but this is Dana White on the left and his wife is on the right. So as you can see, just give me a second. So as you can see, Dana White, his wife slaps him, and then he slaps her back. And this was caught on the news. This was first reported on by TMZ, and they showed this. So, guys,
I'll let Chuck go first.
Yeah.
I think there are two stories here. I think the first story is what Dana White did. And the second story is how the media reaction covering Dana White. And I would think we need to speak about both. But we have to, first start with what Dana White did. Dana White is a billionaire. He built UFC from the ground up. And he's not an inherited billionaire, by the way. Most billionaires, they came from billionaires. He came from building the UFC from nothing in many ways. And we were about 2 decades in. So he hits his wife, and he had some comments yesterday. And his comments were, well, it's only happened once, amongst many other things. This only happened once. And if you look at his history, or if you even listen to his own mother, it's very highly unlikely this only happened once. And we have to really put that out there because, media is parroting that. And I'll give you a couple of quotes that from his own mother, who's been estranged, that talks about how he changed dramatically once UFC was successful. His own mother said he's terrible the way he speaks to women and treats women. That really bothers me because I don't believe I ever brought him up like that. She said Dana is, that's his own mother. Dana is ruthless as in control and dominance of the sport. Sadly, however, that ruthlessness has also spilled to his personal relationships and his personal life. That's his mother. And she also says to UFC fans, Dana is the king of MMA, but I cannot express how overwhelmingly disappointed I am in him as a son, grandson, brother, and uncle. He shows little respect for women, from the way he treats his own mom, grandmother, girlfriend's wife, sister, niece, and employers, to the very public rant on a female reporter that he had about 10 years ago, absolutely cursing her out. So we have a history here. And now this history is caught on video. And on top of that, Dana says it's only once, and you have media that parrots that. This does not look like it's a one-time thing. If it was a one-time thing, it's still too much. But I think that it's really important to say this is there's a history here.
Yeah, I want to add in here the problem that we've seen is that when Stephen A. Smith reported on this on ESPN, and I don't know what you guys think about Stephen A. Smith, but he tends to be he tends to have a little bit more empathy for some than others, and we can get into that. But Stephen A. Smith, when he reported on it, he said this was a one-time thing. As you just heard from Chuck, apparently not so much. Now, there is the point that some people will point out that, well, she hit him first. So some people are pointing that out. But I think the problem that we have seen, at least the way the media has covered this, the sports media in particular, they seem to be going, they are less harsher towards him than they were towards Kyrie Irving. They were less harsher on Brett Favre than they were towards Kyrie Irving. And this is someone who's actually physically hitting someone. And as you just heard from Chuck, that was a statement from his mother who said he had that behavior. And Stephen A. Smith did not mention that when he was reporting on it. So what is really going on?
Well, you bring up Stephen A. Smith, and I think we really need to. Well, we could talk about it. Did you want to play it before I go?
Yeah, can we do that?
Let's do it.
All right, cool.
The inordinate amount of times we've had to address subjects like this, we have to maintain consistency in pointing out, you do not put your hands on a woman if you are a man. You do not do it. Dana White knows that. And, all I can say is that, again, he has spoken out against men who put their hands on women before. And whatever punishment you would exact under these circumstances to somebody else is what he should apply to himself. But I love him.
I could see him doing something even stricter just because he's the leader. You know, and he's the leader of men. So to your point, not just what's enacted to a fighter, but maybe a little stiffer.
Sure.
Because he's the head. I just want to say a couple of things. They talked about being drinking heavily.
Yeah.
When you're under the influence, not shining moments, often people don't make their best decisions. So in that sense, it's a cautionary tale.
Yep.
And in terms of it being an isolated incident, I've known Dana since I was 22. I have the utmost respect for him.
Yes.
And I don't judge people by their worst moment. I agree with you on that punishment part. And the other piece that I just want to say, as a woman, it was also his wife's hands on him. So no one should be putting their hands on anyone.
Okay.
Male, female, female, male.
Well, like I said, you're absolutely right. I don't disagree. I have nothing to add other than I just think it's important that if you're going to sit on this platform, you owe it to your audience to be honest, and forthcoming. Dana White is not just somebody I know in sports, nor you. He's a friend.
Yeah.
I love him. And I just wish the best for him and his family. And, you know, he knows, he knows how wrong he was to do this. And he knows that we're on this air. He knew ahead of time because I reached out to him to let him know I would be talking about this this morning. He knows that he crossed a line that he has never crossed before and that he swears he will never cross again. And he's incredibly ashamed of himself. And that's just where we are right now. So
I'm not a part of the whole cancel culture, and I don't judge people by their worst moment. And he has a beautiful family.
Yes, he does.
And I wish the best.
But that's not the same response. And it's not just Kyrie Irving. Like, again, I watch a lot of sports, so I know I've watched First Take many, 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 many times. And there seems to be a particular pattern, especially with Stephen A. Smith. When Black athletes are in trouble, he is much harsher on them than he is on the white athletes. Take Dana White, out of the equation. They weren't even this hard on Brett Favre.
Nope.
You know what I mean? It just, they get like this extra pass, this extra cushion.
Yep.
And why is that? Who supports ESPN? Who owns ESPN?
Disney.
And UFC is a partner, and they just entered another 5-year multi-billion-dollar contract. So there are 3 layers to this. And you mentioned the racial layer, particularly how Stephen A. lights into Black athletes all the time versus, and ESPN in general, versus how white athletes are. And then you go another layer, because now you have a corporate partner. So he's not any white person. He's a corporate partner. And so you're protecting ESPN's investment. And I have more to say, but I think it's worth reiterating some of the language just in case anybody missed it in that interview. So let me recount. I love him. I have the utmost respect for him. I don't judge people by their worst moment. He's a friend. I love him. I just wish the best for him and his family. He has a beautiful family. This is the language Stephen A. and Molly used. And then he had he gets a call. Dana gets a call. They're both friends with him. Now, if I was so friendly that I could not give an objective report, then I would recuse myself from, offering my journalistic opinion. But I'll tell you where it goes from just terrible journalism to journalistic malpractice. It goes to journalistic malpractice when both Stephen A. and Molly say it was an isolated incident. Not Dana says it's an isolated incident. They said it's an isolated incident. And again, a line he never crossed before. Stephen A. Molly, how do you know it was an isolated incident? How do you know it was a line he never crossed before? Do you have a camera in their bedroom? Everything we have from his background, from how he treats women, from what his mother says, and then there's somewhere in their book, I looked over the book, they got into a fight even on their wedding night. And on both sides, there was abuse. And you can't say that. That's journalistic malpractice. You are covering up for your business partner. That is what's happening here. And we have to go a little further. This is not just me talking or speculating. One of the ESPN reporters, Jeff Wagenheim, and I hope I said his name correctly, and I'm going to tell you his tweet. His tweet was, "We've been told not to write anything incendiary on social media about Dana White's situation. And I understand why and have abided by that. I just ask y'all to understand that some of us at ESPN do not have as soft a take as this on domestic violence. And he put his tweet above the video we just watched. So we have people at ESPN who want to say something critical of Dana White, but their leadership says, don't mess with our business partner. He kind of walked it back a little afterwards. He probably got a tongue lashing. But this is what we're dealing with. When you're dealing with a corporation who allegedly does sports journalism, but also has corporate interests, then you get these kind of instructions and orders from above. But what was so rare in this case that it was so blatant that another reporter had to actually call it out and say it publicly.
And I can mention other people too. It's again, it's not just Dana White. It's not just an example like Kyrie Irving. It's also examples like Colin Kaepernick. I remember the way that Stephen A. Smith went off about Colin Kaepernick. He was much harsher on him than he has been on white athletes that have been called out for misbehavior. Colin Kaepernick is one. And then we can go back to that elevator video with Ray Rice.
Yes.
And Chuck, I know you remember that. Like, was he this calm?
How can you forget? ESPN played the Ray Rice video on loop every day for like a couple of weeks, to the point where Janae Palmer, who's now Ray Rice's wife, who he struck, said, ESPN, stop playing this video. I want you to stop playing. She said that publicly, and they kept playing it. So if she says it publicly, and ESPN keeps playing the video, is it really about education, about domestic violence? Or have we crossed, are we disguising feminism as racism? Is that what's really happening? Because if your position was, we just really want to expose this, why isn't Dana White on loop? Why isn't Dana White video on loop at ESPN? So we see different actions. And I think what's something important you just mentioned, and I want to add it, because yes, there is the white-black. ESPN, Stephen A. and others go crazy on any type of black misbehavior. But it's even deeper than black misbehavior, because you brought up Colin Kaepernick. Stephen A. in particular, I have a couple of problems with Stephen A. One, he is, bombastic. He creates fake controversy. He does all that. But there are a lot of people who do that. Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd. I have a problem with all of them in that regard. But when you get into lying, when you get into misrepresenting facts, that's another story. And he has done that before. And usually every time he misrepresents facts, he's protecting a corporate partner. So behind Colin Kaepernick and his harsh words for Colin Kaepernick, it was to protect Roger Goodell, because Roger Goodell at the time had a sham workout and said that he was really giving Colin Kaepernick a chance on 4 days' notice. And that was absolutely not the case. They were not giving him a legit workout, and they had all these stipulations when he got there. And Stephen A. took up for Roger Goodell and chastised Colin Kaepernick to say it was a real workout. You blew your opportunity, and that was a lie. So he had a problem there.
I was just going to say really quick, Chuck, he had to come back and correct his statement, because he found out later on that wasn't true. What he said wasn't true.
That's right. That's right. Because actually what really happened is Stephen A. got a source. The NFL fed him a source, and their source was wrong, or their source honestly told Stephen A. that it was legit, and Goodell maybe played his source. That happens sometimes when you get a source. And rather than say, I got wrong information that this workout was legit, he chastised Kaepernick. So when Dana White hits his wife, he's sympathetic. When Roger Goodell needs cover, Stephen A. is there. When Jerry Jones, a pic photo comes out, Stephen A. is protecting Jerry Jones, making Jerry Jones sound like the victim that he has to deal with this. Analysis would have been Stephen A. telling us, hey, you know what? How come Jerry Jones has never had a black coach out of 8 coaches? How come out of 10 defensive coordinators, he's never had one black defensive coordinator? In fact, out of 10 offensive coordinators, he's only had 1. When you add in all his coordinators and head coaches, he's only had 1 black coach out of 32 since he started. Let's have that conversation. Let's have the conversation that when Colin Kaepernick kneeled and his players were thinking of kneeling, Jerry Jones said, you know what? If you kneel, you're not going to play for my team. That's not a direct quote, but that's essentially what he said. So if you're defending Jerry Jones and saying this is 50 years ago or 60 years ago, well, I need to see what evidence happened that Jerry Jones is this changed man, is this racially progressive man, because I haven't seen that. So over and over, whether it's protecting Dana White, whether it's protecting Jerry Jones, whether it's protecting Roger Goodell, or even chastising Eric Reed, who was fighting against the collective bargaining agreement because they had a terrible collective bargaining agreement. It's so much so that Damar Hamlin would not get benefits under this agreement because he hasn't hit 3 years. When Eric Reed tried to fight that, well, you had Stephen A. chastising Eric Reed as well. So those who are fighting for the people, those who are fighting for justice, Stephen A. has consistently backed the billionaires.
Hey, Sabby, did you want to address that one chat that because I could say a couple things, but if you want to address this, hang on, sorry.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Marxist said shitlib take from RBN just because Dana is right wing. That's not Marxism. Well, first and foremost, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't know anything about his political.
Me
neither. I didn't know he was right wing till this second. So I didn't know. I'm not talking about politics. I think I believe right wingers and left wingers and everyone across the political spectrum can have intimate partner violence. I believe that everyone is capable of that.
Exactly. We're talking about a double standard here when it comes to professional athletes and the media. And you see it heavily on ESPN. Stephen A. Smith, listen, when Stephen A. Smith recently came down on Kyrie Irving, Roland Martin?
Yes.
He does the liberal show on YouTube.
Yeah, we know.
He had to come on to ESPN and correct him.
Yes.
Again, this has nothing to do with someone's political ideology, which I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know about his political ideology. We were not talking about that. But what we are talking about, because you keep bringing up the black athletes who ESPN chastises, it's not just Stephen A. either. It's across the spectrum. It's across sports media. Skip Bayless has made an entire living for 2 decades hating on LeBron. Is that hating on a black athlete for either misbehavior or just playing poorly is a commodity. And we have to understand that. Hating on the black athlete and chastising and condemning black athletic misbehavior is a commodity. It is clicks. It is capitalism. It is the way you make money. And as long as that hate and that capitalism and that money and that profit collide, you're going to get more of the same. And the opposite is true if you go after Dana White, where you're hurting your own product.
In fact, Chuck, actually, I have this tweet to share as well. This actually goes into what you were just saying. Slack on both sides says Dana White clapped his wife on camera in broad daylight and he still has a Nike deal. Yep. So, I mean, it really goes into show that there is really just a double standard, especially when it comes to race. And we got to remember that when it comes to black people in the country, really in the West, race and class are intertwined.
Yes.
Because most black people are also part of the lower class or lower middle class in this country because of the racial disparities that we see in this country, which is due to capitalism. So really, the capitalism and white supremacy go hand in hand. And this actually shows and sheds a light on that, saying that Dana White still has a Nike deal. It's like, what about the deals for people who actually are black, who got vitriol from the press? What about them? Do they still have their deals? Have they been dropped? Should they be picked back up again?
Yeah, Kaepernick lost his endorsements. Kyrie had also lost a couple endorsements, even though he came back and apologized. By the way, I want to remind people, Kyrie didn't hit anyone. Kyrie put a link to an Amazon a video offered through Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. And by the way, I have not watched the documentary. You have to pay for it.
Yeah.
You have to pay for it. I haven't watched it, but people I've spoken to that did watch it, they said that it wasn't necessarily what the media was saying it was. So I don't know. I'd have to check it out. But like I said, they're charging like $40 for you to watch that documentary, which is ridiculous.
Instead of $49.99 actually.
But notice there wasn't that same type of outrage towards Amazon for having
there
the
wasn't.
video.
There wasn't. There really, really was. And it's funny, if you had paid for the documentary, 50% would have gone to Jeff Bezos. You know, your $25 would have gone to Jeff Bezos. So the fact that it moved to Amazon and Bezos is making the money and they're still talking about Kyrie tells you it wasn't really about anti-Semitism. That's what it tells you, because you would have moved on. You would have moved on to the person prior.
Right. Like Bryce said that Shaq showed in one of his theaters. Right. Shaq showed the movie in one of his movie theaters. Shaq does own movie theaters. He showed the movie in one of his movie theaters. But Shaq also demonized Kyrie.
Yeah.
You see how this works? They all got in line. At the end of the day, all of them, Shaq, Stephen A. Smith, Charles Barkley, all of them got in line and said, yeah, we need to take down Kyrie. We need to get on him for this one. But look how much kinder they are towards people like Brett Favre. They didn't give Brett Favre enough heat, in my opinion. This man stole millions of dollars from poor black people.
Yeah. And they still haven't given Brett Favre enough. But to your point on anti-Semitism, I've said for a few years now, the biggest story of anti-Semitic story that was absolutely covered up, or one day story, was when Bernie was running for president, there were swastikas at his rally, that the banner was unfurled with a swastika. And then there was another swastika outside his headquarters. And these were one-day stories at best and barely shown. And at the very same time this was happening, because it was the wrong Jew that happened to. It wasn't about anti-Semitism. This was Bernie Sanders, a Jewish person who was critiquing Palestine at the time. So that was glossed over. If anti-Semitism is important to you, and a man running for president is getting swastikas at his rallies, don't you think that's important to cover? Don't you think that's important to talk about and educate the populace? That did not happen. So we're selective often in what we go after and we don't go after. And when I see over and over they're trying to make black athletes and entertainers the face of anti-Semitism, I have to say, I don't really think this is about anti-Semitism, even though within there are some legitimate critiques. I think we're talking about racism disguising about anti-Semitism, because I know there are all these other ways that we can talk about anti-Semitism more responsibly and not conflate the issue.
Oh, and absolutely, Chuck, because one of the biggest anti-Semitic issues I see is the proxy war in Ukraine. Yeah. That is a massive anti-Semitic action that we see on behalf of the United States government. We're literally giving billions of dollars in weapons to Nazis in Ukraine, and you mean to tell me the entire Jewish community hasn't been in uproar? You mean to tell me that the entire... Now, there are some people, Jewish people, who are in uproar about this. I'm going to make myself clear. But when it comes to the media is not showing this. They're not saying this is anti-Semitic. Why are you guys supporting these Nazis in Ukraine?
Yeah.
Because there are some people who are Jewish who are looking at this with the proxy war and they're going, wait, what are you doing? Because they're literally giving weapons to our enemies, people who want us dead.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, like, if the United States government, if the Biden regime actually wants to support Jewish people, they would not be supporting NATO giving weapons to people in Ukraine, to these Nazis in Ukraine, to like the Azov battalion and other battalions that are supportive of this.
Bryant said, thank you for this, Bryant. He said, this dynamic has been going on since Jackie Robinson, Jack Johnson, Ali, etc. continued to call out these anti-Black commentators. Yeah, there's been a long history of this. And Chuck, I'm sure if you remember the football player Josh, he was the one that kept getting removed because of marijuana.
Gordon.
Josh Gordon, yeah,
correct.
Because he was with the Patriots. He was with us last, the Patriots.
Yeah.
And he was another one, heavily demonized. And I'm like, it's weed.
Yeah, he had an addiction problem, but it's weed. And it's exactly right. And, you know, I've sort of been really covering media for a couple of decades now. And there was a 5-year period that Forbes was doing a survey. And who are the most hated people in sports? Right. And I have all the data and I could probably put it together, but I'll give you the summary. In this 5-year period that they were doing this survey, nearly everyone on the list was Black. Almost everyone in the top 5, top 3 were black. And what was so interesting is it didn't matter whether it was criminal behavior or not. So you might have Michael Vick and Tiger Woods and Terrell Owens all at the top, right? You know, so one is infidelity, one is a crime, one Terrell Owens never committed a crime. He's just not like. But what happens is media keeps pushing, and I blame media first and foremost because they keep pushing black athlete misbehavior as a commodity, and it keeps getting clicks. So you didn't think to put Ben Roethlisberger on the list? Why was Ben Roethlisberger gone from your list after he had a rape allegations, right?
2.
And so, and you could go down a list. Brett Favre, the new story you hear is part of a long history of scandal, by the way. So this is what sports media is about, and we have to understand that in that light. And I do believe, and you know, I'd have to talk a lot longer on this, but I'll give you the summary. I do believe there is a relationship between how sports media treats the black athlete and mass incarceration, and that meaning you deserve your punishment. We don't have to fix this. That media has an incredible platform in shaping white attitudes towards Black America in ways that even beyond the news, that's beyond everything, because sports hits everyone. So it's by design, it's profitable, and it has very harmful consequences.
This is also the reason why. Oh, go ahead, JB.
Well, no, I was going to ask, as far as the media is concerned, remember when Laura Ingraham told? Am I still here?
You're still here. You're about to talk about shut up and dribble.
Okay. Remember when Lauren Ingraham told LeBron James to shut up and dribble? But oh my God, he plays for the Saints. Quarterback.
Drew Brees.
When Drew Brees had a political opinion, then Lauren was like, well, he should be able to express his political opinion because he is a citizen, and citizens have political opinions. It's like, wait a minute, you told LeBron to shut up and dribble when he said his political opinion, but Drew Brees can say his political opinion? I'm sorry, racist much? And so it's like this double standard that comes across whenever it comes to people who are disenfranchised in the media, because people like him have such a big platform. They don't want them to say a word, but the moment someone expresses it for a more pro-capitalist, white supremacist, or right-wing view, then it's like, okay, you can say whatever you want.
Right.
Yep.
And sport, what's more political than sports? I can't go to see a football game without seeing military troops being honored during the national anthem. That's political.
Yep.
Spending half of our budget on the military to kill people all around the world is political. So now when Kaepernick wants to stand up for racial justice, stand up so for cops that kill, that they be held accountable, oh, we don't want that kind of politics. So we're not really talking whether it's political, because sports is inherently political. It's jingoistic, it's patriotic, it's a tool used by the empire. It just depends what your politics are.
Yep. 100%. 100%. And I think too, this is just something that if you haven't paid attention to it before, there's a reason why people like Michael Jordan, other than his talent, there's a reason why Michael Jordan was beloved by so many people besides his talent. Michael Jordan did not speak up against social injustice, against these any type of like political like issues. He didn't speak out about that. When you heard from Michael Jordan, he talked about basketball. He probably would talk about his family every now and then, but he would not touch those issues. And even Michael Jordan said later on that looking back on it, he wished he would have been vocal, but he knew what would have happened if he did.
That's right. It would have cost him a whole lot of money. And, you know, to your point, a great book that I love is The Heritage by Howard Bryan. Howard Bryan is an incredible writer, and he talks about the black athlete and activism going back to Paul Robeson fighting Jim Crow in the 1940s all the way up till now. So he does address Jordan, and he calls it the triumvirate of O.J. Jordan and Tiger Woods at this period of general silence before that starts to change in the last decade. after Trayvon Martin, you start to see a big change in that area. And he really dissects that in a brilliant way. So anybody listening, I'll say, pick up that book. It's a great one.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring up, before Sabby leaves, I wanted to bring up your tweet. This is the tweet that actually got me and Sabby talking. This is one of the reasons why we invited you on. You say, how the F do they know if Dana White hitting his wife was, quote, isolated incident, end quote, a line he never crossed before. This love fest is most pathetic water-carrying journalistic malpractice for a corporate partner I've ever seen. Then you give the examples. I love him. I had the most respect for him. I don't judge people by their worst moment. He is a friend. I love him. I just wish the best for him and his family. He has a beautiful family. This is not how ESPN depicts black athletes who hit women. By the way, there's an upcoming UFC fight on ESPN Plus.
That's right. This past Saturday. And so I talked about something, but I want to talk about one line, and Molly said it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think Chuck froze for a second.
Mm-hmm.
He'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a telling sign. It's something that we've seen. Okay, go ahead, Chuck.
I was going to say there's something that Molly said that I both agree with and disturbed me. Mm-hmm. And she said, I don't want to judge people on the worst day. Now, I think that's actually a good sentiment. I actually believe that. I think too much, especially Twitter, we judge people on their worst day, the worst tweet. I've tweeted or said things a couple of years ago. I'm like, what was I thinking? That was the dumbest thing ever. So we need to get away from that and judge people on their record. Otherwise, we're all bad because we all mess up and we make mistakes. So I'm very empathetic to that point of view. The problem is ESPN absolutely judges people on their worst day. They absolutely judge black athletes on their worst day. They judge them by their worst day and sometimes only by their worst day. So for you to come on and make an exception on your entire business model for Dana White, I have a problem with that. Though your sentiment was a good sentiment, but you don't start that sentiment with Dana White, because I've been watching ESPN for a couple decades and all you do is judge people on their worst day.
That's very good. We have a couple minutes left for Sabby. Sabby has to leave in a minute. Sabby, what is going on with you tonight on your show?
Yeah, so at 7 p.m. Eastern time, Jimmy Dore is going to be on. So we're going to talk about this whole force the vote thing and concessions. And we're also going to talk about AOC's response to Democrats not forcing the vote. So that should be pretty interesting. Also, an upcoming anti-war rally that's happening in D.C. We're going to talk about that as well because he's supposed to be one of the speakers. And then I have other news stories. So yeah.
Say the date, Sabby.
February 19th.
All right.
Chuck knows too.
I knew it was in February. I actually forgot the date. So thank you.
Nice.
President's Day weekend, man.
Yeah, that's good because, it's tough. Been covering anti-war in D.C. for like 10 years now. It's hard to get more than 100 or 200 people at any rally. So it's always been very, very disappointing. And hopefully we'll see a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a lot of people coming out. I know, Jimmy will talk more about it tonight, but I think Garland Nixon is also one of the speakers. And so is Medea Benjamin.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So
this
is going to be a really great discussion. Be sure, if you're not subscribed to Sabby Sab's channel, sure to subscribe. It's actually in the description below if you want the link to Sabby's channel. So please make sure to go there and be there prompt in 21 minutes from now, where Sabby will be talking to Jimmy Dore as well. So Sabby, thank you so much. I'm going to be carrying this over with Chuck for a few more minutes. We're going to be covering the last bits of this discussion, but it was great to have you, Sabby.
Appreciate it, Sabby. And you know how the rules go, Sabby. When we're in the studio, you could interview me. When we're on the street, I interview you.
I noticed.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Sabs. All right. And then there were me and Chuck.
Yes.
So, yeah, this one of the things is I find it interesting that I think Martin Luther King Day is coming up soon.
Sure.
But then I think next Monday, the day is coming up. Yeah,
Yep.
it's coming up Monday. And the funny part is that there is this much double standards within sports, and people will still start quoting Dr. Martin Luther King, and they'll say, "Oh, we judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin." But the funny thing is, they give more credence to people who are white than they do the people who are black, and that's the crazy part. And the thing is that the big story isn't necessarily that Dana White slapped his wife, which is also a very important topic. I'm not going to belay that. But the point is that he is getting kid gloves in comparison to other people who are of people of my complexion.
Yes.
Who it's like, okay, you can give him kid gloves, you can't give them kid gloves. My thing is, if you're going to vilify us because of what we do the same thing, then vilify him. But if you're going to treat him with kid gloves, then treat us with kid gloves. So the thing is that stop the double standards. But this goes into the eras of white supremacy. And there was a comment by somebody who said earlier, do black people actually watch sports to get away or to escape? It's in our faces all the time. We cannot escape being black, even when we're trying to watch sports. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. So that's just something, your thoughts.
Well, I'm glad you started with Martin Luther King and how he's been distorted and how his words and his phrases have been cherry picked, even the famous content of your character. He also talked about we need to get rid of police brutality in that same speech. They forget about that one. I'll throw one out there that people don't often know. It's whites, it must frankly be said, are not putting in a similar mass effort to re-educate themselves out of their racial ignorance. It is an aspect of their sense of superiority that white people of America believe they have so little to learn. You don't hear that quote. Quote. And that quote is, where do we go from here? I think his most important book is his last one, the one before he died. He evolved, and they're all important in their own right. So I'm not minimizing it. But the one they never talk about is where do we go from here? And that was his sharpest and his harshest critique of white supremacy. That was after Jim Crow, at least legally, ended. So he had to have a new fight. Jim Crow was at least conceptually easy to fight because it was so black and white. But once Jim Crow, at least legally, was changed, then it became more nuanced. Then he's fighting for poor people. Then he's fighting for economic rights. Then he's fighting against the military-industrial complex, all the things we're doing now. And they want to forget Martin Luther King. They want to keep him like from 1965, when the battle changed, he changed and he evolved, and we have to uplift and reclaim that Martin Luther King as well.
Well, that's also what made him dangerous, and that's why they took him away from us. So that's also a really important point. Chuck, I want to have you on my channel so we can have a conversation.
Let's do it.
I will be sending you the invite very shortly. You best believe. And I want to invite you on to see your political journey and evolution so that we can talk about that. And then you can be an example for people who also wanted to get into this space to speak out against the perils of white supremacy, capitalism, the unfairness, and for free speech. And so I want to prop you up as a good example for people to follow as well on my channel.
Well, I look forward to it, and highly privileged, and I really appreciate the invite. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This last super chat, Bryant says, this type of treatment of our best black representatives trickled down to all aspects of our society. Trayvon's jury considered him an unarmed black teen to be a threat to an armed man. Thank you so very much. So if you guys, where can they find you, Chuck?
I'm at Twitter at ChuckMoD1, just, sharing my thoughts. And I also do some sports writing at Deadspin, so I'll probably have drop an article next week. And otherwise, you'll see me in the street. You'll see me at the anti-war rally. Now, I'll probably be on the street this weekend as well. There's a lot going on, and so look for some original interviews.
All right. Thank you so very much for joining us, Chuck. It was a pleasure and honor to have you once again.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Definitely. And if any of you are would like to come to my channel, I will be going into the reading of Assata Shakur's autobiography. I'll be doing that, as well as continuing the reading of Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti on my channel as well. I read these books on theory so that I can educate myself more, and then you guys can learn along with me. Or if you guys already know these things, you can help teach me on my channel. That's called the Jaybe Font channel. That's also linked in the description below as well. I just want to thank you guys. This was an abbreviated version of the Sabby and Jaybe show. Be sure to click over, get yourself some rest, go to the bathroom, get yourself something to drink, get some snacks. If you smoke weed, smoke a bowl, go ahead, do it. Or eat an edible, or if you don't, have a drink. And if you don't do that, then have some ice cream. If you're lactose intolerant, eat a cookie, whatever. But thanks so much, everybody. Love you. And forehead kisses to every single one of y'all. Peace in the Middle East. One more thing. I'm sorry. I forgot. I got to make sure I do this because this is not fair if I don't catch this. JB, gosh, get it together, man. Okay, one more thing before I go. I know y'all like, JB, what the hell, man? Let me do this. Aaron's probably going to be like, what in the hell, JB? Sorry. Thanks for the tip on Rothan. Roger says, let's not forget they also made a black man face the Asian hate so that they can get their Asian hate crime bill passed. Yes, yet we still don't have an anti-lynching bill for us. Thank you so much for the tip on Rothan. Roger Meadows. I got it right before we left. I looked and I got it. Clap for me because I did it. I did the damn thing. Okay, bye.